is not shaved. Let that be known. My head is not shaved, not yet at least. Welcome. This is the San Carlos Computer Club. Say that again? Okay, so in your Google client at the bottom, you've got the row of buttons. There's it says more. Click on that. I'm telling you how to get the settings. Okay, so in settings, you should see there's a column on the left. The first icon is for audio. The second one is for camera or video. No, Irving, what we're talking about is we're talking about the Google client, the Google Meet client. Okay. And then at the bottom of that, there is, in the middle, a button that has 3 dots on top of each other, one after another. You click on that, and then at the bottom of that menu is settings. Click on that, and then the second icon down from the top is video. And you know what? I just saw you on video, so whatever you've done over there worked. You were on video, now you're not on video again. You were on video just a moment ago. So is it the red button at the bottom that has a camera on it? Maybe you've turned off your video? Good morning, all. We're just taking an extra moment getting organized. Happy Halloween, everybody. I wore my spooky outfits. Mom made me this awesome cap a few years ago.
Is it a spider?
It's a spider. Isn't that cool?
And you trimmed your beard.
Yes, for the occasion, right?
Pretty bad when you clean up for home.
So we are not having.
Sacred.
We are not having our normal trick or treat in Lomondon.
Oh, really? This is
Now
news.
we're doing a party at the Palapa,
So what is that? Kids can come by and pick up candy at the Palapa?
I guess.
We're each supposed to have a table festooned with candy, and the kids walk around.
I've got candy, I just haven't taken it yet.
Do you know what time the setup is?
Now, that's what I read.
But they're coming this afternoon.
They're coming, we're supposed to be there at 3 and they're coming in at 4.
All right.
Okay, that makes sense.
Do you need one?
Well, it is Halloween.
Did you get the email I sent you, Scott, about?
I did, but I have already looked at some of that
Okay,
stuff.
good.
And yeah, I was curious if you guys had paid attention to the
I'm just
Apple
glad
stuff.
I didn't buy my new MacBook before I left.
Right. This is, what was it, like a 30-minute presentation announcing the M3s, which is very fast.
And my current MacBook is worth $135.
And was that the same price as before? What was it that you were trading in before?
I was trading in my iPad,
Your iPad?
I believe.
I'm just curious
Because if it was the MacBook, it was for something.
if it was so you just dropped almost $300 overnight of value.
Over a week or whatever, 2 weeks.
Yeah.
But we had talked about that too, so.
Unfortunately, that's always the possibility when there's
Now, I have a tech question.
an announcement from Apple. Yes, that's what we're here for.
My
Tech
question
questions.
is, which one should I buy?
As far as these new Macintoshes,
The Mac-
well, all you need is the original M1.
Well, I know, it's not my option, is it?
I know, and they're pretty crazily priced. The
There, I see.
if you want the Pro machine, it starts at
No. Oh, yeah, the Pro, there's actually a cheaper Pro.
No, I think it's just a MacBook, right? It's
Oh, maybe it's not a Pro.
yeah. I thought the Pro. I thought I saw it quoted. Let me bring it up since we're talking about it. I'm curious. Well, Apple just announced their M3 processors, and instead of rolling it out as like this is the M3 6 months from now, the M3 Pro, Ultra, Max, they didn't do any. They just dumped these 3 different style processors onto the market, and their original M1s are still beating performance and per a watt per power in the marketplace. And they've just released the 3rd generation of this that's just doubling all that. So now you're looking at computers that they're saying can easily get 22 hours of battery life, have twice the performance of the previous brand new chips that we're so impressed with. They're
Performance meeting speed.
yeah, absolutely. Performance meaning speed. So they're comparing it to the latest Intel chips and the latest in their the latest of theirs and the latest of the Intel chips, and they are beating their original chips, and their original chips are still beating the Intel chips. Like even though we're into the 12th and 13th generation Intels, you have to crank the Intels up to such a high power usage to get up to the performance level that these Mac chips are getting. Well, it affects everything. Yeah, I mean everything is. Hello, Jonathan.
Hello, I have a quick question.
Certainly.
Would you consider, I'm guessing that it has to do with generation, but would you consider that NVIDIA is better than Intel when it comes to processors?
Yes, at the moment.
At the moment.
At the moment, AMD is actually what you're thinking, right? Yeah. Yeah. The Ryzens have a better performance package than Intel right now. Right now,
Would you recommend me buying one?
yeah. I mean, if that was the choice, I wouldn't be concerned one over the other. It would be a price issue for me. But if you're doing a gaming rig, then you would be looking at Ryzen because it gets the better performance. When you put the money into it, it's got better performance than the
I
Intel.
was guessing that, I don't want to interrupt just quick because I just recently bought a Ryzen 50, I think, 7.
Yeah, the 7000 series, yeah.
Yeah, and it has graphics integrated, which I thought it was nice. So I thought, but some people were telling me that Intel is better, so I wanted to hear from you.
It is not. It's been to the embarrassment of Intel that they have not. They have just gotten swooped by AMD with these Ryzen chips, and so they've just barely kept up with the performance that they've. This happened over the 12th generation, the 11th and 12th generation. The Ryzen line came out and just kicked all those performances of Intel to the curb. No matter how high up you would give it in power, it couldn't reach the same as AMD, and AMD was doing it at a lower power. Then the 13th generation has come out, and what Intel's design model feels like is they've just taken the governors off of everything. So as long as you don't mind it getting really hot and you pay for the cooling, then it approaches the AMD performances. Yeah. Yeah, there you go. I got to tell you, the Qualcomm announcement and this Apple announcement, they've happened around the same time, because Qualcomm, if you look at their announcement, they're beating hands down the Intel platform, and they're showing performances above the Macintosh chips. So what I've told you today may be moot in 6 months from now, because we might be using Qualcomm chips for.
And present prices will go down in all the.
I would think so. Intel's really only surviving right now because you can put so much power into it, but over time that gets pretty expensive. A 300-watt computer versus a 14-watt computer to do the
Huh.
exact same processing power.
Okay, now I understand.
Oh, that's a lot of
huge
electricity.
difference of
Yeah.
electricity and.
Yeah, I mean that's like your computer has a car attached to it versus you're using the charger for your phone. It's,
Yeah, that makes sense.
yeah, but they get the same power. They go the same distance. They do the same jobs. It's just one of them needs,
consumption wise then.
yeah, consumption. That's the issue.
Okay. Does anybody need more coffee? Okay, I'll be right back.
So,
Sorry to interrupt.
no, that was not an interruption, that was.
And that was completely appropriate. Thank you for joining the computer club.
So there are 3 different MacBook Pros or 2 MacBook Pro 14 inches. One is an 8-core and one's a 16-core CPU. And one is 2 terabytes to 2 and up to 22 hours. So I don't know the difference.
I think, Judy, you're shopping alone. I don't think there is anything that you're looking at that that limits your capabilities for what you're doing.
So
I think
one of those will take all my 14,000 pictures and everything.
I think that where you want to spend your money would be in storage and memory because you can't choose those things later.
So
Right.
I can get 512 gigabyte of storage for $15.99, or for $200 more, I get 1 terabyte.
See, I think I would rather spend money on 1 terabyte than spend it on the processor.
Okay. So
For your
8-core,
use case, if you were a graphic artist, if you were editing videos for a TV production company, if you're making your livelihood putting together 4K videos on YouTube, I would steer you differently.
okay.
But no, you're not. And their processors are so incredibly potent that the most minuscule that they're offering is so much more power than
So
we've
my
ever had.
question is, this says all, maybe it's not. This is
Why am I having trouble getting into Asia? I don't want to go to Asia. Europe, don't want to go to Europe. I'm just trying to bring it up. I just want to see it. Where is it?
I'm on
The United States. There we go.
I'm apple.com, choose your new MacBook Pro.
Yes. MacBook Pro. Come on. Mind-blowing,
Of course, then we would
head-turning.
have to add the cost of driving to Tucson. I would
Oh,
do
they
this.
do. Okay, so they are starting at $15.99. I must have saw that. Available on the 7th.
Yes.
And I think from what I know of the Pro and Ultra, or the Pro and the Max, the M3 is fine for anyone in this room. There's no reason to spend that kind of money.
So the extra 200 you would spend for the 1 terabyte as opposed to 512.
Yeah, because what we know about SSD memory is that, and this is not true of spinning disks, but these solid state disks, the bigger they are, the longer life they have, and the faster performance they get. So you really don't want to skimp on the SSD, especially on these Macintoshes, because you're not able to replace those SSDs. Those SSDs are I mean, that's you're set with them. If you want more space later, you're gonna have to buy a new computer. And so the longer that the life of the computer is based on how big that, I mean, it's kind of silly. It was a misconception back in the day that bigger was better. And a bigger drive could fail just as easily as a smaller drive. And when you bought a bigger drive when they were spinning disks, you did it because you needed that extra space, not because you were planning for the future, not because there was a guaranteed performance boost. Bigger never meant faster, and it never meant better. But people always misconceived what it meant. Whereas in this case, the technology of SSD, the way SSD lays data across its memory, It literally means you have more opportunity to use it, which translates into a longer life. And because of the way it's read from and written to, the bigger the space is, the faster it can do it. So you actually get better performance out of a bigger SSD drive.
So, and did you read anything about the 22 hours?
Yeah. I mean, only that's what they're guaranteeing now is 22 hours,
Well,
an
that's
additional
what it
11
says,
hours.
Up to.
Yeah.
It says up to, so that doesn't mean that
Well, what they're saying is that you can take advantage of an additional 8 hours of battery life, and they are not 8. I said 8. I mean 11 hours of battery life. And the way that they make that calculation is that they look at the performance of the M3 versus the M1, and they show it doing the same tasks at half the power. And so even though the M1 is such a dramatic improvement over the Intel chipset, this is twice that. So their estimate for battery life is about 11 hours for the M1, the M2, and they estimate 22 hours for the M3. Very impressive, odd presentation. The presentation happened on a Monday night during football. It's a little odd.
And the World Series.
The World Series was going on?
Yes.
Oh, all right.
There's one is in the series.
I did not know any of that because I'm not a sports
Yeah,
guy.
you spent all that time in Tucson or in Phoenix?
I'm not a sports ball person.
Well, I'm not a baseball fan either, but I think it's pretty interesting that they're in the World Series.
So you saw their next biggest innovation was it's black now?
I saw that.
Yeah, space black.
I mean,
It looks pretty.
it does look pretty. It wouldn't show my fingerprints quite as bad as the silver, I think.
Well, maybe they said there's some new finishing process they use that's supposed to keep fingerprints off of it. So we'll see. We'll see what happens with that.
It's because it's electric.
But
That's
I
right. It's
don't
electric.
understand.
When you touch it, you get shocked.
Yeah,
So you don't want to
touch
put
it.
fingerprints on it.
It also says something that I don't understand. I don't know what a force touch trackpad is.
Oh my gosh, they brought that back?
What does that mean?
I just hate that terminology, force touch. Sounds like something out of the Catholic Church.
The nuns maybe do it.
22 hours video playback, 15 hours wireless web browsing to
That's
give.
great.
Yeah.
But it says Magic Keyboard with Touch ID. That's good, but Force Touch trackpad.
So the trackpad, the Force Touch trackpad has more than just gestures. So we've been using gestures in the PC and Mac platform for a while now. And that's when you're using more than one finger, use 2 fingers to scroll, use 3 fingers for certain activities like zooming in. You can pinch. You can pinch and what is it? I can't even remember what this is called. Spread. Yeah, make it larger, make it smaller right there on the trackpad. The Force Touch means that there is, beside the button, there's a third, like you go deeper. So you press, that's a button press. You press harder, and that's another kind of button press. It's kind of like having a right mouse button, but Apple's never wanted buttons, and so they took away the left mouse button, and now and so you tap the trackpad to get the left mouse button, and then they decided you needed more features, so they developed the Force trackpad, so you can hold it harder to get the second mouse button. When really what you could just do is put buttons on the trackpad, and it'd be better for everybody if they. Hey, I just lost my internet connection.
Okay, but we'll be here till after lunch.
I mean, then now it's back. I monitor all this stuff as we're going on, and all of a sudden we didn't have a connection to the internet, from this computer. I don't know what that was. There we go. Okay. Well, weird.
Intel Max.
I don't know. Yeah.
The last time I went in there, she told me. It's aliens.
Alien. I don't know if I believe that.
We'd be talking about you too.
Yeah.
You should be up here with your equipment. My equipment's failing. Okay. Well, then it's almost as old as what I'm using. Okay, I'm here. Where is that window coming from? Damn it. Just love having technical problems in the middle of all this. Oh, God. Now what's going on? I'm almost ready again. I don't know what all this technical problems are, why any of that would have affected all of that, but we're back. All right. Wonk, 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 wonk. Okay. So Qualcomm has introduced its next generation ARM-based Snapdragon X Elite chip specifically for PCs, built on a 4 nanometer processor. And nobody needs to understand what nanometer means. It's just the smaller the number gets, the more state-of-the-art the processor is. So we're all still using some computer in our lives that are up there at the 14 or 12 nanometer, but these chipset developers have gotten all the way down, and what Microsoft or what Apple was announcing the other day is a 3 nanometer processor. So I suspect that Qualcomm had this secret announcement coming out, and Apple knew that they were going to jump. They're going to take Apple's energy, and so they immediately scheduled to release this information about their chips so that it would come out right after Qualcomm's announcement. So Qualcomm is announcing they've got a Mac type equivalent for Windows-based hardware partners like HP and Dell. They're going to show off this chip that's going to allow PC like 20 hours of battery life, and they're showing performance numbers that are beating the original Macintosh chips. And then less than a week later, Apple's showing you their brand new chip, which is 1 nanometer smaller, which indicates that it's better. And they have
Costs $1,000 more.
well, yeah, more than 6 months ago, yeah. Yeah, so that's what's going on. The Qualcomm they're saying that they are getting 3.8 gigahertz to 4.3 gigahertz. These are insane speeds that you don't find in anything but Intel chips, Intel and AMD chips. So these are matching and beating performance of the most recent Intel CPUs, while consuming 68% less power. These are their numbers. I'm not vetting them. This is what they put in their PR release.
My criteria for speed is that pictures don't fill like this.
Yeah, I think we were way past that at this point. But
if it'll do something in 1/10 of a nanosecond instead of 2/10 of a nanosecond, does it impress you?
Well, the question is, does it do it and you're dealing with a blow dryer, or a cool breeze? How much heat is coming off of that computer, right? Like I've owned computers that you could bake on because they get so hot. And that heat always means energy. It's burning your fingers. That not only is that looking at life expectancy of the device, but it's also indicating how much electricity you're really using.
Hard on your lap.
That too, burn your lap.
And your sex life.
So I find that Intel, the timing, all this is very interesting. I kept saying the M1, but it's the M2. I'm looking at their press release here. They're saying that they're offering 50% peak multi-thread performance than the M2. And now Apple is
Smart marketing.
yeah. Well, and poor Intel. Intel is lunch-handed to them. They gave up in this battle and they started getting dominance just by beating them in performance by hooking lots of electricity and cooling up to their platform. And so that still exists. The Intel needs to be thought of as the muscle car. That's really what it is. It's this beefed up muscle car that's got lots of power, but you got to deal with lots of power consumption, lots of cooling that needs to be done. And they can achieve performance higher than these two chips we've been talking about, the Qualcomm and the Apple. But they have to do it at such usage that only gamers are taking advantage of stuff like that. And the worst threat to that right now is game developers deciding to go with a RISC-based platform. The only reason that the Macintosh is not beating Intel in gaming is because the games aren't hardware to do it. Forward this muscle car kind of mentality in PCs. Now, Qualcomm has been working with Microsoft to develop these new chips that compete directly in that market. And they're going to have the neural processing unit built into it. It's going to have these great performances at low power usages. And the key is that they're going to be running Windows software. And that's where all the games are. And so this is really the first chink armor in this performance rate. It doesn't matter if they've got better performance in the end than these chips do. What matters is this is where the games are. And if they can get the games on this platform, then Apple is competition for the performance in the future. This will turn into a neck and neck. We used to do that with the boxes, the beige box versus Apple's slick aluminum box. And what was inside it was what they were competing against for people's usage. But now that they're chip, they build chips. This is processors inside that are going to be going neck. For none of us, it'll all be for enthusiasts and people, the kind of work that they're doing. Probably push forward more of the VR and mixed reality stuff, because all this is more processing power in smaller packages that use less electricity, making them more ideal for phones and mobile devices.
Well, my solitaire runs just fine.
Yeah, but it'll go faster. Now you can play solitary with a VR headset, cards in front of you. And
I've seen what happens to people with those headphones.
You know what's interesting is there's been a number of viral videos going around now with people like full Oculus gear. They have pass-through now in the Oculus 2 and 3. You can turn on an external webcam and have a mixed reality experience. You got this huge, like bigger than a RoboCop headset in a visor, and you turn on this webcam and you're walking around town. So you got this huge thing on your head and you're walking into coffee shops and
grandkids got together and bought my old business partner, who was like a grandfather to them. And after it was for Christmas. And he thought he was sitting on a couch, looking through it. He went down the front stairs. Yeah. Ooh, yeah, dangerous.
I've only had one, maybe two experiences with the IA. Two experience. I had one with a customer here in San Carlos. They got one of the first ones, and they let me play with it for a little while. And then my friend Justin's son has one, and say he let me play with it for a while. And both times it was the same kind of experience. As soon as it slid over your eyes, you're in a different world. It was so impressively a different world.
As long as you're sitting down, it's probably not too dangerous.
Yeah.
At least the first few times, sit. Yeah. He just went for a tumble.
Well, I want to give others an opportunity to, if there's any, I don't have a lot more to say. I'll probably have more to say about this in the weeks that come as more information comes out about these. Por favor. As more information comes out about these new chips, but we really are in a pivotal moment with this technology. We're going to see different style products come out. We're at that moment where they've got this it's like AI right now. They've got this thing, and they're trying to figure out how it fits into what we're doing right now. And all they can come up with is, well, replace the old thing with the new thing. But we really are at this moment where it's they're having to reimagine how they're going to be using this much power and technology. Yes.
So I heard on the news, and I wasn't really paying a lot of attention, that President Biden is trying to pass legislation about AI, and that Vice President Harris is on her way to Europe for some type of an AI conference.
I know nothing about this.
Well, it was just kind of like, I heard it, but it wasn't really registering, and then I was just thinking about they're having something who's trying to pass some kind of a bill.
Well, you know what is interesting? I can't say anything on that. I haven't paid any attention to that. But what is interesting is Mark Andreessen. If you're not familiar with that name, he's a well-known venture capitalist, but he's better known to my generation as the guy that put together Mosaic for the National Supercomputing Association, the very first graphic-based web browser that ever existed. When I was in university, we were beta testing it in the computer department before anybody had ever brought up a graphical screen to look at somebody's web page. This was the very first software that would allow you to do that. He was the one that took that concept and formed his own company, Netscape, which some of you are definitely old enough and been here long enough to know what Netscape is. In case you've forgotten, the first internet browser you had to buy, and that was his business model, was selling internet browsers and having a company in the background that would fill that browser with useful stuff like email and instant messaging and news reports, similar to an AOL, because AOL did exist at the time, but all internet based. And so he was really the first one to do that. What he has recently put out is an opt-ad, basically telling all of government to back off. He's become a bit of a wingnut. He's basically saying all this stuff is better off without regulation. And regulation is just stifling innovation, and innovation is what's going to solve all these problems. And so that is, you'll probably come across some of that in the press, and I get nervous that this kind of mentality actually, I actually was very attracted to it when I was in my 20s, this idea that technology will sort itself out, that if we just allowed it to move and advance forward unencumbered, it would sort out all its own problems, the nature of technology. Kind of like the only thing that fixes science is science. But after watching what technology has done over the last quarter of a century, I'm not in agreement with unrestrained technology. You guys have heard me talk about it in the past. I'm in favor of certain regulations on technology. we've watched with social media how it's affected people.
It says President Biden signs an executive order for AI oversight to create some federal oversight of rapidly expanding AI systems. Well, I think they're voting on it now, aren't they?
I thought it was a given.
Maybe it is.
Well,
Well,
before it,
Go ahead.
you might not remember this, but it was said that it's good for General Motors, it's good for the country.
Yeah, I think that's really where this
That's where it
this
started.
mentality comes from. Is it comes out of a time period where of perpetual growth is good, whereas we've watched the results of perpetual growth, and it's not necessarily good. It stacks up in piles of waste that we can't use. In fact, one of the impressive things, I can't remember if we talked about this last week, but one of the most impressive things that's happened recently is this modification of the right to repair law in California. If we didn't talk about that last week, they have changed that law from high-end goods. And I never knew this before. It's because of this law change that I learned this. And this will probably blow your mind as well. If you own, like, for example, a Mac laptop, and you lived in New York and it was 5 years old and it broke, you had to buy a new laptop. There was no system to get that fixed under Apple's system. But if you took it to California, they had to have a system to fix it, which means in the California economy, that Apple store had to have access to the parts that would fix it, had to have the schematics and diagrams for fixing it, and there had to be services available to fix it under their current right to repair law. And what they've done is they've just beefed that up. Now all technology, $50 or more, has to have at least 7 years of parts available in the marketplace, as well as available instructions made available for doing repairs. So Apple has to, at the very least, offer services to fix this stuff. But because of the current right to repair law in California, they have to make repair instructions available, and there has to be parts. So if they're not providing parts, there has to be a third-party market of parts that naturally exists. If not, Apple has to prop it up.
Maytag was a big deal with California. The washers, you used to be able to buy a washing machine that would last for 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
It was Maytag. I think it's within the last 7 or 8 years, they constructed them with a dust date.
Yeah.
Basically. And California and Maytag went around and around and around about that. Not sure what the result was.
Well, this is amazing. Before, this was intended for things like appliances. It was intended for iPhones, things of high ticket items. They've modified this to $50 or more, $50 or more. That means they don't want these knockoff Android phones from China to come into their market. They're stopping that kind of product production.
It's also a waste management problem.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, that's what we are, is we're throwing things in landfills and we're trying to stop that kind of behavior. This also includes batteries. So we're going to very quickly see replaceable batteries come back, right? So, I mean, if your phone's going to last 7 years, you need to be able to change the battery. And maybe, Ray, maybe you won't be able to change your battery, but you could easily take it to somebody like Sony and I and change the battery.
I just went through the batteries.
Yeah.
For tools. My husband was a woodworker, and he had a lot of heated tools. And eventually, through the years, the batteries all died, and I could not get new ones. They want you to buy a new tool with a new type of battery.
Well, this is what this law in California is trying to circumvent is
So how are they going to rationalize electric cars with this law?
they don't have to.
Yes, they do.
No.
That's
The
biggest
the
issue.
auto company has to
Well,
rationalize it.
somebody does.
Yeah, I mean, California doesn't. Okay, California could care less how you do it, but these are the rules you're going to follow, and that's what I appreciate about this law is let the market sorted out. I mean, I can see immediately all these Android phones that sell for $60. They're out of this. They either have to drop their price down to nothing, like you can buy a knockoff Android phone for $10, or they got to stop selling in California. And when you stop selling in California, I mean, essentially, California is 20% of our economy in the United States. So nobody's going to build just California products. So all these phones, all these TV sets, all the gaming consoles, everything is going to have this 7-year limit on it.
Is it only California?
It's a state law. It's not a federal law.
But is that the only state? This type of-
I believe that when I've read about this, they have mentioned other states that have done similar things, but they're not significant. And we'd be like, who cares if Alaska has a law like that? It's not going to affect anything, right? All it's going to do is hurt Alaskans because they'll just stop selling products up there. But when you do it to California, you're hurting everybody. You're changing the way the industry works in the United States. So it's impressive. It'll be interesting to. Now, the unfortunate thing is they had to make carve-outs for very specific things. And of course, tractors is one of them. You know, the John Deere issue is still an issue. To get the legislation passed. What's that?
On Deere, you're not allowed to repair your own.
And in California, you're not allowed to repair your own any as well. Nothing has changed. And that's my point, is for them to get this legislation passed, they had to make carve-outs for certain industries. So yeah, the $60 Android phone cannot exist in the California market unless there's parts to fix it for 7 years. But the John Deere tractor is still proprietary. You can't touch it. You might get in trouble. You might void your warranty. Those are the caveats of what it took to get this. But the people at iFixit, I listened to a great interview with the CEO of iFixit, and he's very happy with this, how it's come about. And he's like, we'll work on that next year. We're happy to have gotten this. And every time we get something more, it's better for everybody. So we're moving into this idea of recycle, reuse, re-engineer with the technology we already have, versus this landfill, throw away, pile up, consume model that we've been going on. What you got there, Jim?
Cherokee. It's almost 4 years old. It's a recyclable phone.
Okay.
And they do have parts for it, and their warranty is if it breaks, you send it back to them, and they send you a new one.
That seems like the model that we could go for. I mean, it would be you might buy into the subscription model if it was that easy. If leasing a car or a phone or a computer was as easy as just getting it replaced out when there was a problem with it.
My new car is so complicated. I call it a geriatric car because it babysits me when I'm driving. It knows when I'm in the lane and it keeps me in the lane. I don't have to touch the wheel. It turns with the road turns like that. You know, and
The case is.
It's got the driver assist.
I can't run into the person in front of me. Those brakes come on. So,
So, you bring that up, Paul, and did you guys hear about this latest autonomous vehicle accident? Yeah, apparently, and I'm sorry, I'm only thinking it was a Tesla. I can't tell you for certain it was a Tesla. So don't quote me on that. But the car hit the person, stopped, and then realized that it had been in an accident, so it wanted to get out of the roadway. And so it pulled over to the side. So basically drug the person in the undercarriage.
This is AI.
Yeah, this is the artificial, this is the autonomous vehicle. Stopped like it had an accident, and then following its program was pulling to the side of the road to get out of the way, but it had no concept that there was a body under the car, and drug the body to like 20 feet, resulting in their death. They weren't dead until they were drug 20 car. So it's ginned up a lot of discussion over all this. It's GM. It wasn't Tesla. I've just remembered. GM has shut down their autonomous vehicles all over the United States. PR and in the look and everything. Not necessarily because they think that there's, like you can imagine, some of these things are just going to happen. They can't account for every absolute problem that could. When you have a car driving around on its own, you just can't account for every possible problem. Nobody thought of this. People, tech pundits are saying, you know what? It looks like we need to put a camera under the car so the car can see what it's hit. It seems like a no-brainer at this point, something they'd never even considered before. But yeah, so this has just happened. They've shut down all their, but it was in California because that's one of the few places. There are a few places in the United States you can run autonomous vehicles. California is one of them. They have their DMV, their traffic, whatever their division of traffic control, and their department has shut down GM from running autonomous vehicles. However, the others have been allowed to continue to run. So GM has preemptively shut down all autonomous vehicles across the country until they've had sufficient time to investigate what's gone wrong in this occurrence. But California said GM's the only one that needs to shut down in this case. All the other autonomous vehicles can continue to run.
Until they run over someone.
Yeah, until something like that happens.
Well, mine's Toyota. And if I'm driving on the freeway, I should pass out, die, whatever. Car will know that I'm not driving it anymore. Come to a stop in that place. Flashers.
Yeah. Well, hopefully it won't drag a pedestrian off to
No.
the side as it's trying to park you.
Or go to the dealership for repairs.
I have a question about electric vehicles.
Yeah.
One, how available is recharging now? Is it like 10% of gas stations have recharging stations, or
I know some hotel motels do.
they do?
It's
Yeah.
mostly businesses that offer.
But
How do
did
they
you know
charge for that?
that if it's a
I don't know.
Tesla charging
Is that at a
station, it
Costco?
only charges Tesla cars? A Tesla
Well, actually-
charging station does not charge other cars.
I thought I read that BMW just bought a whole network of Tesla chargers.
Well, that's BMW and Tesla then.
Yeah.
Without a Ford.
And Tesla has, I mean, when you say it only charges Tesla vehicles, remember that's the fault of the other automotive industry, the other automotive developers. The Tesla charger is open source. The Tesla charger is open for any vehicle developer to build their car to charge with it. So any car that doesn't use it, that manufacturer's chosen not to use it. Elon Musk made it open source because he was trying to push all this stuff out there. He wanted the industry to grow.
How does the customer pay for that?
Credit card. Or they have an app. They have an app on their
Is it
phone.
more expensive or less expensive than gasoline?
That is a very nuanced question. I don't even think I could begin to answer it. But
Here's your,
But what happens? I've been in one circumstance. I was with some folks that had an electric vehicle. We were going to a show. They found an electric charger, pulled in, plugged in their car, used the app. Supposed to be charging. Went into the show. I have no idea how it compares to gas, but I mean to get a charge. I mean it's a lot. It takes a lot longer than.
Very small fraction.
It is.
yeah, but it's
Still very
hours.
yes.
It's hours to charge. It's not minutes to fill.
It's only hours at home, but at these fast charging stations.
Oh, really?
15,
Yeah.
20 minutes.
If you
Yeah,
have a
that's
charger
right.
in your carport or garage or an outlet, do they have the apparatus on the car to plug it in?
Well,
Yeah.
I can't say for every car, but I'm familiar with a BMW electric car, and quite literally, they got an orange extension cord plugged into it off of their house.
My neighbors have a Tesla and they have it run by extension cord too. To plug it
The only trouble is unless you have solar, you're not saving anything.
in. Exactly.
Wait, what do you mean? Are you in what respect? Do you,
It's a lot-
are you saying that,
Yes.
wait, I want
You're
to,
paying a bigger bill.
I want to understand Jim's comment. Do you think that you're paying in electricity the equivalent of what you'd be paying in gasoline?
Charging it at home,
If you're plugging it in at home,
you're still.
you're burning electricity at the rate of gasoline to fill that car?
It depends.
Mhm. Yeah, I would disagree. I don't think that I think your expenses are lower regardless.
So you gotta add in your batteries and how long they last too.
Well, sure. I like right now, kind of a standard is right around 300 miles before it needs to be
Well,
recharged.
I meant the life of the battery is what,
Well, yeah.
and how much you need to replace them.
My car, I had an electric hybrid, 2004. It's still running perfect. It's almost 20 years old.
And you haven't replaced the battery.
No, it runs as good as my new one. It's a quality car, it's a Lexus. But when I drive with him, I can't tell that I'm driving with mine with it is. Actually, it's a little better because of the weight of the battery.
I understand that the hybrids are better than an all-electric car because they are charging themselves.
Yeah, it works
When they
terrific.
run.
I like mine.
You don't plug them in. They charge themselves.
Well, I would imagine the hybrids also spend more time topped off. You're not,
Because they charge while you're driving.
Right.
yeah. And that is fundamentally better on batteries than letting them drain completely.
Hydrogen is the best.
Yeah, well, I mean, except for the explosive
I was just
factor.
thinking about the-
Tell that to the Hindenburg.
No, water burning cars are coming up strong.
They say, but the big companies are not doing it.
They're getting there.
Cornell did quite a bit.
Yeah, I did. I saw something recently. I am getting, in case anybody out there is interested, I'm getting the next meet up because we're down to 2 minutes on this one. So if you're listening to me out there on,
About the life of the battery itself, because once they're dead, then you've got a huge problem and it's costs as much as almost buying a new car to replace the battery, is what I've read.
yeah, 2/3 the price of the car is the battery. And actually, I think what we're going to end up seeing is the electric vehicle will probably come with a certain amount of time that they legally are responsible for that vehicle. Like when you buy it with the with this extended period of time on it, because nobody would buy a car that the battery would only be good for 5 years.
What do you do with the old batteries?
Well, that's got to be part of the manufacturing process too. That's got to be.
Trying to change.
Hold on a second.
Put them on a rock.
I got the,
I'm listening to yours.
There's
Sodium-based batteries.
yeah, which is it's supposed to be the future now. Is these elements that aren't rare earth elements, but things that are very easy to come across. I'm sorry. I'm trying to go ahead. I'm trying to get organized here again.
Concept technology. The scale especially. So, it reminds me of carbon. That made 9 years ago. It's not the price, but carbon basically. Hasn't happened. That was exciting. It was so many years later.
Who's gonna pay for that?
But the PR, the PR. And like even the computers, the hardware, the software always preceded the hardware.
Well, it is a real chicken and the egg kind of problem with the electric vehicles, because you got to have the charging station, the battery life, both the daily battery life and the life of the vehicle battery life. All of those have to be accounted for it to be a good idea.
Well, this is not technical, but I bought fiber quite a few years ago. My reasoning was very simple. I didn't want to buy just that simple. It was the fourth over. So we got to get away from that reason alone. I don't know what it costs.
I mean, that's a great sentiment. I think you're right. One of the things that we never think about is just all the different facets that this is tied into. It's so much more than just not using oil. Hey, Jim, I'm sorry. I'm going to mute you because I think you're coming through my speakers here. It's
Who said a word?
not you, the other Jim.
You wear your kilt well.
And Jim's up there twice.
Is he?
Well, so is,
Sounds Bill.
Oh, well, yeah. One of this is something new that Google Meet has done. I don't even know if I can I get rid of it? I'm in tiled. What if I do auto? There we go. That's where it's supposed to be, like that.
Here's an interesting.
Go ahead.
So what would it cost to pay for these services that we don't have in productions? And the thing is, we're a club and do an assessment, it's probably down to nothing.
Oh, well, yeah. In this case, we're using Google Meet, and so they just want us to buy the Google Workspace subscription to hold a meet without it being interrupted. And it's interesting. I think it has to do with frequency of use as well. Whenever I've handed it over to Cheryl, she has not gotten this time limit. Like, we can just keep going on the same meet. And I think it's because she uses it so infrequently to host a meeting that they're just letting it roll. Whereas with me, every week I host a meeting with it, and they're like, hey, how would you like to buy some more time? Well, where are we at? It's 11 o'clock. I did stick some other stuff in here. I think we've talked about most of it. Oh, here's an interesting thing, though, with your iPhones. 17.1 came out for your iPhones. Yeah, it did.
not yet. Yeah, I know I did. No, not yet.
So here's an interesting thing. My daughter and I both have iPhone 11s. I have a Pro. She has an 11s. We're the only Apple phones in our house. Yuya and Emily use Android phones. I'm reading this. BB's already updated to 17.01. She did it without my influence. She just did it on her own.
Because I'm still at 16.7.
Well, and 16.7.2 has come out now at the same time that 17.1 has come out. And so I'm reading through a description of what they found with the tests with 17.1, thinking this is the one to upgrade to. And I'm talking with her. I'm like, it looks like this is the one you want to go to. They're showing battery improvements from 17 to 17.1. They're showing a speed up, battery improvements, specifically in older phones. I'm like, well, that's us. I get to the end of the article, and that's us until you hit 11. So 12, 13, 14 are all showing battery improvements. This article was so deceiving, too. It was right in the last paragraph. They're saying they're showing improvements over 17 in 17.1. However, everyone's got a battery drop from 16. So if you went from 16 something to 17, you have seen a battery decrease. And if you go to 17.1 and it's a 12, 13, 14, or 15, you're going to see an increase from 17. But it's still a battery loss from 16. And so, and unfortunately, I'm sharing this information with my daughter, and she's already boom, 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 started install. I'm like, wait, stop that, because with 11, it's showing a decrease. So 17 is a decrease on an 11 from 16, And 17.1, according to this research, is showing even more of a decrease,
But for a 12, it's.
showing an increase.
Well,
For-
after a decrease. then
That's
it's-
right.
okay.
That's
So
right.
it's not really showing an increase.
No, in fact, what it's showing, or that's what was so deceptive about all this, is that if you're going from 16, you're getting less battery life. It's not as bad as when they were prompting you to upgrade to 17, but it's still a decrease.
So if I'm at 16.7.1, I should do the 17.1 because then I will see my battery go back to what it was before.
If you're already on 17.0.1, if you're on 16.7.1, the way I read this, if battery life is your concern, then you should upgrade to 16.7.2 and continue to wait for a version of 17, probably 17.2, where they have either worked this out or explained why it is. I mean, it could very well be that they've included AI stuff in this version that requires more of an older CPU than it does a newer CPU, and that's why we're seeing this battery loss.
Yeah, I had a weird thing that my phone, which normally holds pretty good, I was up in Green Valley and it all of a sudden was at 3%. It's never that low in a day.
Yeah.
In a day.
So that could be your environment.
It could be.
Yeah, it
It could
could.
have been. I was.
Well, because what happens is the phone wants to stay connected. And so it's constantly judging how strong a signal it's got. And it's trying to back away from being too powerful so that it can save battery life. But so it's always doing this operation. It's always staying connected to the network and trying to stay connected with the least amount of power as possible.
I think about it's doing searching, just over and over again. It's just.
And so imagine all of a sudden there's a problem with a cell in your area, or you dip behind a mountain, and so all of a sudden that cell that was so close to you is no longer available. So it has to search out and out and out, finding another cell to get connected to. And that distance creates more power draw on the device, and so you end up losing, your battery drains quicker than what you were familiar with. People in large municipal areas like a Phoenix or a Seattle or a Portland, Oregon, or a San Francisco, they don't suffer from these problems because the next cell is so close, it's negligible, the difference. When one goes out and they move to another, they're not. But when you're in rural areas, like Green Valley could probably be considered a rural area, as soon as a cell goes down or you fall behind a mountain shadow, then your phone is looking for the next closest cell, and that could be quite a distance away. And you could see a dramatic drop in your battery.
And it used to be you could change how it was searching, but you can't.
I can't comment on that. I'm not
No,
certain. Yeah.
Because when I would be down south, if I would turn my phone off and turn it back on, it would lock onto a better tower. But if I'm just traveling, it still stays on the old one until, or it did, it doesn't.
Well, yeah, you can probably force some of that stuff by going into airplane mode and coming back out if it's not releasing. But what you're probably experiencing is you have more opportunities, and it's trying its best to find the best opportunity to get connected. You might be witnessing the best opportunity, whereas before you weren't. Before it was just doing the best it could.
Like in Colorado, my house has no AT&T service.
Mm-hmm.
So if I go out of my neighborhood, then if I go like to airplane mode and back on, then it locks on to something. But for a while, it won't on its own.
Yeah, I feel like throughout both the Android and the iPhone platforms that I've used, we've gone through a period of time where it wasn't as quick to disconnect and reconnect to a new cell. And I think they're much better at it. So when you say you go into airplane mode and come out and you don't see a difference, I think what that's really indicating is before you've even done that, how well it has been making that decision for you in the first place. Like by the time you're trying to preemptively say to try to reconnect, you really don't need to because it's already done that. This is the best connection you're going to find. You follow what I mean? Yeah. Whereas I have older equipment in my life where I drag it from my office into the living room and I put it in airplane mode and then pull it out because I want to make sure it drops the other connection and pull it. But newer devices, I never feel like I have to do that. I feel like it's very quick to move on to another device that's got a better connection. It's all these chipsets. I mean, all of that kind of stuff is all anticipated in the chipset that you're using, like this new Qualcomm chip that has been announced for PCs. All of those kinds of factors are all part of that PC, that chip design. So the older generations weren't as quick to recognize there's a better signal over here. And that would cause us to do things like go into airplane mode and pull it back out. Now it has to find a new connection. The older chipset wasn't doing as good a job to look to see if there were better connections. The newer
The
chipset.
part that irks me is when there's a cell tower right there and I don't have 4 bar.
Well,
I
and
see it.
yeah, line of sight, and who knows? That could be saturation. It could be that in your area there's so many people on that cell at the moment that you're on a cell that's a mile away, even though this one's right in front of you. I mean, all of those are. I can rationalize all those kinds of.
It's still annoying.
Bill has had his hand up for a while now. What is it you want to add, Bill?
Actually, it's Cheryl.
Cheryl, what is it you want to add?
Well, you know, life is so awful and all this kind of stuff. Sorry, I fell into my costume for a moment there. I'm a well-aged Canadian red wine.
Okay.
So I was whining. Anyways, so no, I'll go back to myself now. You were talking about the iPhone and the update.
Yes.
I have an iPhone 13 mini. I thought my updates were turned on automatic, but it did not go any higher than 16.4.1. It says 17 is available for me. What do I do?
So, Cheryl, we were just going through this. What you have to know is that nothing about 17, it's some of these articles are deceptive, but what I have discovered is that 17 will decrease your battery life from 16. It will decrease your battery life across the board for all models going to 17. The 17.1 update to 17 doesn't decrease your battery as bad as long as it's a 12, 13, 14, or 15.
Okay, so I have a 13. My options are
if your
right now.
biggest concern, Cheryl, if your biggest concern is battery life, then right now you want to stay in 16. And the latest version is 16.7.2.
Okay, so I have 16.7.2 available to me. I could probably go ahead and do it now, unless I have iOS 17.1. Is that what you're saying?
Well, what I'm saying is that as soon as you get into 17, you're looking forward to less battery life.
Okay, even on 17.1.
Yeah, and 17.1 just isn't as bad as 17. God, I should have written these articles.
Okay, so.
And I suspect by 17.2, what we're going to see is options where older equipment can turn off certain things so that they don't lose so much battery life.
I sort of remember something about battery memory. Down battery and then charge.
Okay.
Is that relevant to this?
Not to this, but it used to be relevant. It was a memory effect from older technology, older battery technology. We use nowadays the modern battery technology is lithium ion, and what we've learned about that is it's very hard to damage, and so you typically can start using the device. You can charge it up to full. You can drain it down to 0. But these batteries typically are warranted for about 300 full, 100% to zero charges. You can't damage them very easily, so there isn't really a need. I meant to turn off notifications on that camera over there. Somebody's calling me. It's whereas in the past you had to be very concerned about your laptop battery, when you charged it, how you decharged it. We had things that would like season the battery, like if the percentage was off, like you get to 20% and the laptop shuts off, it's like, oh, it's not calibrated. And so we had these calibration procedures that we would go through. None of that's relevant any longer. The battery just works. It will discharge from 100% to zero, warranted at about 300 times during its life. So if you were to take a modern device and you were to drain it to zero every day, that battery would be damaged in less than a year. The other thing that we've learned about this kind of technology is that if you maintain a charge at 60% or higher, that the life of that battery will extend up to 2, 3, 4 years without any real damage to the material. It's better to have it topped off than it is to have it drained down to zero. So if you're watching your device go below 60%, it's a good time to plug it in if you're concerned about that device having a long life. It won't affect you in the next year or so. If you're somebody that replaces your device every 1 or 2 years, you wouldn't even be aware of this health being gobbled up. But it will create an unhealthy battery over time if you allow it to go below 60% for a majority of your usage. If you're one of those people that go out the door and never plug in your phone till you get home at night and it's at 12%, by next year, that battery is going to have a lot of life that has been burned off of it. So I'm always looking for opportunities to plug in my phone. I create them in the car. I create them in my workstation, my areas around the living room. I get long charging cables so that I can make sure that if my phone has dropped below, or my phone never drops below 60%. I think that's really what your goal is. Now, when that's your goal, you also have to be very skeptical of all your charging devices, because you can damage a battery and a device by having bad charging devices. And so you have to have confidence in your charging devices, and you have to have this kind of mentality if your idea is to prolong the life of these devices. With this new law in California, though, what we're going to be able to look forward to is if you damage your battery, there'll be a battery out there to replace it. And there'll be a service available to do it. And the parts will be available and the instructions for how to do it. And I suspect the iPhone 16 will be much easier to change the battery in it than the iPhone 15 right now is. They'll be selling a battery that people like me can change, or somebody that's not scared. Jim could probably change his battery. I know his skill level. But we have batteries out there where they're almost impossible to replace. And that will go away with this new law. We're at the end of an hour and 15 minutes of doing this. Does anybody have any last things they would like to bring up in this meeting? We normally end with like a recommendation of things. Is there anything you guys would like to recommend to the rest of us? I'm afraid we're going to have to call this to an end.
Absolute History on BBC channel.
Absolute History on the BBC channel.
It's a series of programs that primarily about the history of Great Britain.
Okay.
But they're interesting, informative.
It's called Absolute History.
Yes. And if you want to get addicted, it's a good way.
Well, it's too bad Chester's not with us. You know, he's the history buff. I bet he'd enjoy that suggestion. Anyone else want to add something to our list of recommendations? Cheryl, you got something?
No, I just broken the coffee machine in our hotel room, so we're having a little technical difficulty of the coffee.
Sounds like you have an emergency over there.
Yes, it is.
Goddamn right it is.
Long, I just saw you were trying to get in, but we're just starting to wrap this meeting up.
Maybe Terry has a recommendation for us.
Yeah, Pop, have you got something you'd recommend for us to read, watch, listen to? You're muted and we don't see your picture, so I don't actually know if you're actually aware that you're in the meeting.
I was going to ask him how his bionics were going.
Oh yeah, well it'd be interesting to get an update on the neural inhibitor. I think that's what it was referred to. The neural inhibitor. I'm sure I've got a recommendation. I know that Yuya and I sat down and watched something recently where we were both like, that was great, and now I don't even remember the title, the plot, or what it was. I have to go back and look through my watch history to find it.
Is Yuya still celebrating?
Her birthday, of course. It's a Yuya Jubilee. It lasts a week.
Good.
She's a bit of a celebrity in this town. Everywhere she goes, she gets birthday presents and lunches, and it's her 50th. She's having an epic blowout at the end of this weekend.
Oh, good. I'm glad.
Jim, we'll see you next week, I hope.
Yep.
We're going to wrap this up. Thanks for joining us online. What's that?
You're gonna be here next week?
Oh, that's a good question. I believe I will be here next week.
And not the week after?
It's either the week after or the week after that. It has not been determined yet.
Okay.
So next week, you'll get an update. By next week, I'll know. At least by next week, I'll know whether I'm doing Computer Club here in person or online.
Oh, there's
You're
Terry.
welcome.
There's two Terrys.
Hey, Pop.
I got lost.
Well, and we're just wrapping things up. We're just shutting things down.
Okay, I need an appointment with you, Scott.
Okay. You know what? I could probably help you this afternoon if you've got time. I'm heading back to the office after this. I can get a hold of you when I'm there.
All right, I'll be
All
here
right.
waiting.
All right. I'll talk to you soon.
Goodbye, everybody.
Adios. Everybody, tech on.
Check the heck.
What's that?
I'm
I'm
closing this meeting down. I
couldn't
think I'm
figure out how to
closing this
get in.
meeting. Something really odd going on. Google Meet. Can I close it down here? There we go. In the call. On. Let's try that again. All right, here we are, the end of the meeting. That was the San Carlos Computer Club. Look, nobody's here. Everybody's gone. Everybody's gone home. I'm Scott Stimson with International Computer Solutions saying happy Halloween. Sorry about the music that was talking on top of us through the beginning. I may replace that recording with this recording. It would not have that music on it, I don't think. That was just a bump. That was just some screwed up thing that I forgot to turn off. Anyway, have a good week, have a good holiday, and we'll see you next Tuesday at 10. Until then, everyone out there, tech on.